Hello and welcome to the Wilder Lincolnshire podcast from the Lincolnshire Wildlife Trust. I'm Melvyn Pryor and he's Matthew Capper. Hello.
How are we doing, Melvyn?
Very well, thank you. Let's talk about things that are going on around the county. And of course, we've just had a couple of big storms, really, haven't we? Has that affected wildlife at all?
Yeah, I mean, I was meant to be leading a day trip last weekend on the Saturday, and it just got cancelled, and so many things across the UK were called off. And it wasn't just people that were impacted, the wildlife was too, particularly seabirds. And we had northerly winds, really strong northerly winds, and a lot of our seabirds would actually spend the winter out in the Atlantic, out in the North Atlantic, and they're really, really quite hardy. But those winds blew a lot of them into the North Sea and all the way down south. And what tends to happen is in the few days after, when the wind then dies down, they reorientate themselves and they start heading back north to try and get back out into the North Atlantic, and they'll often follow the coast. So this last few days we've had all sorts of seabirds going through. One of the wardens the other day was doing some sea watching at Chapel Point. He had a little storm petrel go through. We've had lots and lots of kittiwakes, lots of gannets, but actually really noteworthy, little auks as well. These are a tiny, tiny seabird. Think about the size of a starling.
Right.
And for something the size of the starling to live out at sea, for the whole winter is pretty remarkable. But we don't see them very often. They would tend to breed right up in the high Arctic, places like Spitsbergen, Svalbard, that sort of area. So for us to get them here in the UK is really unusual, but we've had them flying by in quite good numbers. We've even had the odd one blown inland. So there was one taken into care the other evening that was found in Tetford, which is not far from here in Horncastle.
Amazing. I mean, I've been out to Chapel Point recently, amazing just to see what's going on there. But it has been really blowy, really cold. But as you say, the birds then get blown into the wash, don't they?
Yeah. So we've kind of taking advantage of it, the kind of the keen birders by all flocking to the coast, and people at Gibraltar Point have been standing up on Mill Hill and wrapped up really warm, and just looking at this spectacle as the birds have been going back northwards. What
about damage then at some of the other sites? Because there's been strong winds as well. That would affect the structure of some of the woodland areas, won't it?
Yeah, we had to close Donna Nook for a day at the weekend. We had to close Snipedales for a couple of days. James, our warden there, he had to basically clear a few kind of fallen trees and make sure that the paths were safe and open again. So, yeah, there's been a fair bit of clear-up work going on as well.
You mentioned little auk, sort of the size of a starling murmurations. It's the time for that, isn't it?
It is. We haven't had a great deal at Wisby yet, but we have had a decent one forming at Far Ings, so they've had a few thousand regularly now for about the last month. So if you're wanting a murmuration, I would say Far Ings is the place to be at the moment, but hopefully in the new year Wisby will follow suit and we can get 10,000-12,000 birds there. It's really great.
Yeah, I'm pleased to see that you've brought some pink wafer biscuits. Are they for a particular reason?
We've been eating pink wafer biscuits all week.
Have you? Right.
Yeah, help yourself.
I will.
Unfortunately, we lost our vice president, Brian Tier, last week, passed away. Age 92, grand old age, lived a amazing life. But his favourite biscuits, the ones that we always used to get out whenever he was coming for a meeting with us, were pink wafer biscuits. So we've been eating them in his honour for the last week.
Well, bless you, Brian, and I'll eat one of those biscuits in your honour in a little while. We're going to look back at the year because we've done so many different things. We'll do that in a moment. But I do remember that one of the early things we talked about was a special appeal this year.
Yeah, the Nature Recovery Fund. We have been so humbled by people's support. It's, always amazing to me that people care so much that they will, dig deep into their pockets and support you with these kind of things. It's fair to say we're only halfway through. We still have a lot of money that we want to raise. The scale of what we need to do to save nature in this county has never been greater, has never been scarier. But we know that if we can do the right things, if we can manage more land, nature will bounce back. So, it's a tough time of year, Christmas, for people, but if anybody's able to spare a little bit, The website is there. Please do give generously. The Nature Recovery Fund is still there, and we're still raising money.
Oh, sounds good. Just have a look on the website. You'll find out a bit more about that. What we thought we'd do as we got to the end of the year is we'd look back at perhaps some of the highlights, some of the things we've been involved with going out and about. And I suppose, thinking back, we've had early mornings and we've had late nights as well, haven't we?
Yeah, to be fair, I didn't join you on the late night.
No,
so,
you're having a lie-in.
I suffered the early morning, but I let you kind of do the late night on your own. But yeah, we've kind of covered both ends of the spectrum and kind of all points in between, really.
Indeed, and I think when I think back to the early morning, that was Dawn Chorus at Wisby, wasn't it?
Yeah, and that was a really nice day. Wasn't the best weather-wise. It was a bit chilly, and we had a bit of rain, so it maybe wasn't as loud and as vibrant as it might have been, but a really nice opportunity to experience one of the best wildlife spectacles. And yeah, you kind of got your ear tuned in, and we kind of taught you a few new birds, wrens and willow warblers and various things like that. Blackcap we had on the day, which was nice. So that was really good to be out. I really enjoyed that one.
It was great, and as you say, it got me tuned into the bird calls, because you were teaching me that once you can identify the bird, you then know where to roughly look for where it might be in the habitat.
Yeah, and those little things that you remember. Shrill with a trill was red.
Yes, yeah.
You know, all those little kind of things that you use to just try and trigger that memory of what am I listening to. And with birdsong, you know, you learn the basic stuff in your garden. Remember those, and then when you are out, you can always discount those, and then you're able to sort of, well, that's different, and where do I go? And it's gradually building that knowledge bank, and it started that day, which was good.
Out and about with Matthew Capper. We're at Wisby Nature Park, and you've just identified a bird that I've been trying to find with the binoculars high up in the tree.
It was much smaller than you thought, wasn't it?
It was, yes.
But this is actually one of our summer migrants, and a really easy one to start with, because this is a chiff-chaff. I'm not sure whether the microphone's picking it up, but chiff-chaffs are really good because they sing their name. So they go chiff-chaff, 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 chiff-chaff. It's a small, greenish, yellowy warbler. So they migrate to Africa in the winter, although increasingly some of them are staying in the UK. And then they come back, one of the earlier ones to come back, and then very helpfully sing their name. There's an almost identical one called a willow warbler, but they sing a very, very different song. So the main way to tell them apart is with the song.
And staying with sound and taking me to the night visit where we went out onto the coast, I went out to find natterjack toads. And the first thing I heard were the toads, and an incredible sound at night.
I wish that it was actually something that we could hear in more places. I mean, the only place in Lincolnshire where you'll get natterjack toads is out there on that bit of coast. But the work that they've been doing, as you found out when you went, has been so transformative. We've had more toads and more strings of toad spawn in this last couple of years than we had in the previous 5 decades combined, and that's down to some really, really hard work and some fairly innovative methods to basically allow these tiny tadpoles to develop into the toads without being predated. And the results have been stunning, to the point where the noise, it's such a cacophony now. And I think Matt and Ruth were telling you that sometimes when they're out surveying now, they can't actually hear each other speak because the toad noise is just so great.
Yeah. Away from the sound, we went to Far Ings, and my hope was that I would see a bittern. And of all the places to go in the county, it's pretty much guaranteed, isn't it, to see a bittern at Far Ings? I'm in about the best spot to possibly see a bittern, but I don't think my luck's going to be here today, do you now?
Well, that's what bitterns do. They torment you, and you will either see absolutely breathtaking views of one walking around, sticking its tongue out at you, or you'll wait for another 8 years and never see one. They're such an enigmatic species. I think this is the best place in the UK to see them.
Well, how many have we got on site, do you think, now?
It's difficult to tell because we still have some of the wintering population, but the males that will breed here this year have already started booming. We've got at least 4 boomers.
And what are people listening out for? That boom, if they haven't heard it before, it's quite a haunting sound, isn't it? And it can be so loud and carry quite a distance.
It carries a long, long way, 3 kilometres sometimes, if you get the wind in the right direction. I mean, it sounds a bit like somebody blowing in the top of a glass bottle.
It sounds wonderful. Matthew, you've got your binoculars on the go, no bitten?
I was listening to your conversation while scanning intently. Nothing yet, but there's still time. Yeah, I was hoping to do a review of the year without you mentioning. It's the one area where I didn't kind of deliver, isn't it? We tried, we failed, but that's the thing with birding, isn't it? It's the ones that keep you going back. That's the kind of the joy of, what you miss.
Yes.
There's always something for another day.
And I have seen some fantastic images recently of both bittern and I think it was egret as well in the same photographs.
Yeah, and that was from the very hide that we were sat in.
Oh, don't.
I know. It's been as good as ever recently. But yeah, one lucky photographer got great egret and bittern, not just in the same view, but in the same photo, which was stunning.
Yeah, incredible stuff to do. We don't just visit our own sites, though, because I went out and about for one of our special podcasts to find out more about beavers in Lincolnshire. So we're in the Ancombe catchment area near to Brigg on Hannah Dale's farm. Hannah, incredible story here of rewilding. So what are you doing?
So my husband and I inherited the farm about 10 years ago, sadly after Jack, my husband, lost his father. It's a really difficult farm to make any money on. The land is really heavy clay, it sits very wet over winter and it bakes really hard and dry in the summer. And for a few years we did try to farm it commercially without very much success, and so we decided that we felt it could offer more to local biodiversity and to nature than it could to farming, and so we've gone down a route of doing something a little bit different with it, and it's sort of a rewilding project now.
And in the past 3 to 4 years you've seen an amazing change in the area. Both wildlife, nature, habitat has changed completely, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's actually really encouraging how quickly nature responds when you give it a little bit of space. So in a very, very short period of time, and we've seen a doubling in the number of different bird species that we're seeing on the farm, and a huge increase in the abundance as well. So, not just the different types of species, but just more and more of individual birds as well. And same across insects. We dug some ponds, and we've had recorded 18 species of dragonfly and damselfly on the ponds. Huge increases in the number of butterflies. It's just been really exciting to see the changes happening over such a short period of time.
Now, the latest introduction are beavers. So how many beavers have you got now in the project?
So it's just a pair, a male and a female. They're 2 to 3 years, so we're hoping that there might be more than 2 in hopefully within a fairly short space of time, but time will tell.
Hannah Dale and her partner, both of them love their nature, both inspired by wildlife, and so took a decision that actually let's put the farm back to nature, and at the heart of that is the reintroduction of the beavers, and they're going to really massively change the whole dynamic of that place, and it's going to be fantastic. I think if we're able to go back in a few years' time to see just what they've done, because they call them kind of eco-engineers, basically. They will build dams and they will slow the flow of water and they'll create all this new wetland habitat. So yeah, you were there right at the start. It was fairly embryonic. They were just starting to do their work.
I didn't see a beaver.
No, but I mean, we can go back. I mean, she was more than happy for us to go back another time. So that's definitely one to line up for a future podcast. Rendell Part 2.
Yeah, and talking of new projects, we went down for the launch of a great project in the south of the county at Bourne North Fen.
Yeah, we had a fantastic new site. We got to see all of the the plans for it. We were well fed as well at the same time, which was always very nice. You got to see your first crane.
I did. That was very exciting because we had a coach trip down to the fen, which isn't far from the Willow Tree Fen. Is that right?
Yep, so as the crane flies, it's only, a mile or so. I have to say, Sam quite often tries to sort of save bits of podcast for various blooper kind of purposes. But in this case, I kind of completely ruined one of your takes by running across with my arms waving, "There's a crane, there's a crane." I was completely unapologetic because I wanted you to see one.
This is really early stages of a fantastic project, isn't it?
Sorry, he's pointing at cranes. Yeah, we're podcasting.
I know, but it's worth just podcasting that they're there.
And I mean, the cranes have been another success story, haven't they, down at Willow Tree?
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. I mean, if you'd said to us 5 years ago that we would be where we are today, you'd have been laughed out of the county. Absolutely, 100%. We had 4 pairs of crane breeding down there this year. We had adult birds, non-breeding birds on the reserve all through the year. They're still there in good number now. We set a new record a few weeks back of birds coming into roost, 42 cranes.
Wow.
I know. Absolutely insane, isn't it?
Yeah, amazing. We talked about early mornings. There was another early morning that you persuaded me to get up for, and this was high tide at Gibraltar Point. And I had to be at Gibraltar Point, I think, for 6:30 in the morning.
So did I.
Well, we both had probably about an hour and a half to get there as well. But it was a blowy old morning, but I wouldn't have missed it for the world. It was just an incredible, unique experience, I felt.
Yeah, despite the wind and the rain, it was magical, wasn't it?
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, the noises, the atmosphere, the Brent geese, the pink-footed geese, watching all of the birds coming off the mud flats and heading off to roost and then coming back out, and just the gulls. We had hen harrier, we had sparrowhawk belting through. Yeah, it was brilliant, wasn't it?
And a seal in the sort of river bit that came and was created. There was a seal bobbing up and down. That got the most views, I think.
Yeah, because you go to Gibraltar Point and you sit in the visitor centre and the sea is a long way away. And on those days, it's really, really hard to imagine what happens when you get these big tides. And then we went there and we stood there on that viewing area up on the roof space. And that visitor centre became an island surrounded by tidal water. And it is so hard to comprehend when you don't see it. And having a seal bob up just, a few metres away from the visitor centre, that was bizarre.
Yeah. Just one final thing to mention, and then I'll look back on the year. And I think it's education that's so important. And I think the environmental awards that we're very much part of, where we see other organisations' projects and how people are encouraged to work and develop things in their local communities. It's brilliant, isn't it? So we're at the finals of the Lincolnshire Environmental Awards. So Nigel Hooper, just explain a bit about your project.
Cherry Fields is about 12 or 13 acres of land which was previously intensively farmed and bought by the parish council to give access to the river. And over the last 7 or 8 years, working with groups from the community and schools and children, we've planted large areas of woodland, we've created a wildflower meadow and dug a lot of ponds and created paths. And now it's a blossoming wildlife reserve that is an asset for all members of the community.
Yeah, there's a few things I would say about that day. I thought that day was brilliant. One was, the award ceremony itself and getting to celebrate just how amazing those communities are and what they have created from, literally little acorns. Some amazing oak trees have grown in terms of community spaces and putting nature back at the heart of where people live and giving them access to it. That was really brilliant. But in the afternoon, we had all of those communities networking with each other, and we had people coming down to find out more, to see what they could do if they wanted to start the journey themselves. And I chatted to this couple. They'd moved up to Lincolnshire from, I think it was Sussex down south. They'd bought a couple of acres of land and they wanted to do something for wildlife, but they weren't quite sure. They were members of the trust, they'd seen we were doing the event, and they went round and spoke to every single person that they could, all of the different bits of advice that they could absorb. And then we sat down with them and we drew out their plot on a piece of effectively tablecloth. But we then marked out exactly what they were going to do where. They took a photo and they went away with a plan. They knew what they were going to do. They knew how they were going to do it. And so helping people to do that, that's brilliant. And there was another guy, flip side to that. This guy knew he wanted to do something with a few acres of land. He'd got his plans, but he came down. And I thought it was lovely because actually he'd started out the day with, I want to create my own nature reserve, my own little space. This is my little project for me. And he went away and the last thing he said to me was, do you know what I'm going to do now? I'm going to go down to the local primary school and I'm going to get the local kids down to help have a say in this and help me create it. And so those two little stories, those two little outcomes from the day were just amazing.
Make it totally worthwhile. Well, in December we think about Christmas, but life goes on the reserves, doesn't it?
Yes, managing a nature reserve is a 365-day-a-year operation. They never really stop. The livestock need checking, they need feeding, things can go wrong over Christmas. So spare a thought for the wardens when you're watching the King's Speech on Christmas Day. They might well be out in the wind and the rain.
Yeah, plenty to do and lots to look forward to. And in actual fact, in January's podcast, it's a chance to find out more about the seals at Donnanook.
And the volunteers, they'll be out on Christmas Day as well. They never stop. They're incredibly committed. They're wonderful, wonderful people.
Excellent. Well, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll wish everybody a very Merry Christmas and hope you've enjoyed the Wilder Lincolnshire podcast from the Lincolnshire Wildlife Trust.